the year's not passing that quick, but it's the March meeting of the Southern Community Partnership. For those of you who haven't met myself, I'm Kevin McLeod. I'm currently the chair of the partnership. So just, we've got a number of apologies, and I don't propose to go through those just now. Between myself and Laura, we'll pick up on them as we get towards the end. Just the minutes were circulated and made available, so it was just to see if there was any matters arising from the last minutes for anybody. No, ideal. And from my own point of view, we've got a couple of outside speakers here, so really appreciate those coming along and giving their input today. And I think, well, I know it's of interest, and the subject we felt was really fitting for Sutherland and for the wider communities. So I'll probably just open it up just now. I know there's been one call off, so just whichever order. So is it? Let me get my other bit of paper right. Who is it we've got coming up first?
I'm actually doing both Highland Adapts and the Climate Hub, Kevin.
Thanks, Joan.
That's not here.
I'd like to carry on.
Am I okay to share screen? Will this let me?
Yeah, it should do, yeah.
So, as I said, I'm speaking on behalf of Highland Adapts. Emma can't be with us today, unfortunately. And I'm also speaking about the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, which is actually the bit that I do, but I'm also on the board for Highland Adapts. So Highland Adapts is an initiative that has been taken forward, which is to look at both adaptation and mitigation to climate change in the Highland area. So there are a number of founding partners. Emma's actually employed by Highland Council, who I believe Katie can maybe correct me on this, were the actual lead partners in starting to put this together. But there are a number of other partners that are involved in it. So Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Changeworks, NHS Highland, Forestry and Land Scotland, Nature Scot, Adaptation Scotland and Sniffer, Zero Waste Scotland. And all of these partners sit on what's called the project board, along also now with the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub. So the purpose of Highland Adapts is that it's an initiative to bring our communities, businesses, land managers and public sector together to facilitate transformational action towards a prosperous climate-ready Highland. So we're looking at both mitigation to climate change. So how can our communities, our businesses, our land managers and the public sector reduce carbon emissions so that we are more climate friendly in Highland, but also, and really importantly, looking at adaptation to climate change as well. We know that across Highland there are several risks, not just from a warming climate. We're looking at rising sea levels, potential flooding. It won't come as a surprise to anybody, the extreme weather events that we've been experiencing of late. And so how we can become more resilient in the face of climate change as well. And Highland Adapt is really looking to take very much a place-based approach. It's a really collaborative initiative, which you'll see when I move on to the next slide, which I'm going to try and explain as best I can. Emma is much better at explaining all of this to me. So the key aim of Highland Adapts is that it is incredibly collaborative, that we are involving people from all of the different sectors. So there is a structure around Highland Adapts in that, so there is, first of all, there's this Highland Adapts core group, which there are people from each of these other groups, which I'm going to go through and explain, which sit on the Highland Adapts core group, so that we are really making sure that we are information sharing across all of Highland. It's also key that it's very much a place-based initiative. So we have some initiatives that are going on already, but from each of those initiatives, we're looking also that that can be replicable across all of Highland. So there is the programme board, which is all of the partners sit on it, as well as the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub. We also have a climate advocates team, which I know Anna is part of. You can see that Anna's here today. And the climate advocates are really looking at people to come forward, whether it's communities, whether it's businesses, whether it's individuals, and really advocate for being a more climate friendly Highland. So there's a couple of subgroups that have come off of that, one of which are looking at a climate charter for Highland. So that's pretty much in the kind of final stages of being confirmed, the climate charter, and it's hoped that there's going to be a senior leaders conference in May, where that climate charter will be kind of revealed, and we hope that all senior leaders across Highland will adopt that charter, and then we will also work on bringing that out. You know, from my perspective of the Climate Hub, I would like to see lots of community organisations adopting that climate charter and just looking to be a bit more climate friendly. There's also the strategic adaptation team, so that is more looking at working with the public sector and how they can become more climate friendly and reduce emissions. We have an engagement team, which I'll come on to a little bit further there. The engagement team are looking at where we've already got these kind of place-based initiatives going on, and actually bringing all of those place-based initiatives together and sharing that knowledge and looking at then how it can be replicable across other areas of Highland. There's also a data and assessment team, and the data and assessment team are looking at the kind of climate risk assessments, what the data is telling us across Highland about what we're facing in terms of adaptation to climate change. In all of these groups, I should have added, there are more people who come into them other than that kind of programme board. So, for example, the Climate Advocates has Anna from Planet Sutherland, it has representatives from the Hub, it has people from Zero Waste Scotland, it has people from Changeworks, it has people from High Life Highland, and then the engagement team, so we have people from the Northwest 2045 that are involved in that engagement team, and also the Climate Action Towns in Alness and Invergordon. We're all linked together. There is an action planning team, but I don't actually think that anything's happened with it so far, unless Katie can tell us otherwise, if she knows more, which is also then looking at where we've got these place-based approaches and what's going on with it. All of it linked together with a communications team. So there will be a Highland Adapts website. That's just in the process of being formed. And the key to that website is that it will link all of these things together, all of the initiatives, all of the kind of resources and information that you need. The way that I think about Highland Adapts is kind of an umbrella that's over the top of everything else that's going on in Highland in terms of climate action. So as I said, it's all about collaborative community-led action. So at the moment, we are working very much collaboratively between Highland Council, Highland Adapts, the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, and also Architecture and Design Scotland on the Climate Action Towns programme in Alness and Invergordon. So Climate Action Towns is a Scottish Government initiative where 7 towns so far have been selected across Scotland. And those towns were selected, there was no application process or anything like that. They were selected based on, had there been a history of community-led climate action happening in them. So if they didn't, then they were prime for the possibility of being one of the climate action towns. And that's exactly why Alness and Invergordon have been selected as them. Also because there are significant risks that are projected for the Alness and Invergordon area in terms of climate change. And so that's very much a collaborative, working with Architecture and Design Scotland on this really place-based approach. So working with the main stakeholders within the community and then also taking them forward. So we're still in the planning stage at the moment. We've been doing various stakeholder events. We've got some in-person events that are coming up in Alness and Invergordon. And then what can come out of that, and that's where then the Climate Hub starts to come in, that we would support communities to then take that community-led climate action. And again, just as I said, the key is that the work that we're doing there is that whilst we might not have Architecture and Design Scotland and other areas of Highland who are looking to put together these kind of place-based climate action plans, what we're doing there is replicable, and there's some learning that comes out of it that we can help to inform across other areas of Highland. So that then brings me on to my part, which is the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub. So the aim of the hub is to provide a localised approach to support community-led climate action projects which address community needs and create a collective, inspiring approach to combating climate change. So we are funded for 3 years by the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government is putting together a network of regional climate action hubs across Scotland. The first 2 which have come online is the North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, which is operated by Thurso Community Development Trust. And the other is the Nescan Hub in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, which is operated by Aberdeen Climate Action. One of the keys that the Scottish Government wanted for these regional climate action hubs is that they are actually operated by a community-owned and community-led organisation, because we're really looking at grassroots climate action and not trying not to do climate action in a way that we are talking climate, that it's actually we're trying to solve community needs, but there is also climate action that goes along with that as well. So when I talk about that, it's things like we have needs within our communities, particularly in Highland. Sutherland and Caithness, where I'm from, have so many similarities in terms of fuel poverty, food insecurity, social isolation. How can also a climate action project help to solve those needs? So if I talk from the example of, with my Thurso Community Development Trust hat on, we receive, this is our community garden, the Thurso Community Development Trust community garden. Now, we had funding from the Climate Challenge Fund to redevelop that garden space. It had previously been a community garden. It had fallen into complete disrepair. It was completely overgrown. And we've turned it into a really thriving community growing space. Now, that was funded by the Climate Challenge Fund. And we did a lot of work in talking about climate to our community through food waste minimisation workshops, through obviously doing the garden, through budgeting, all of those things. But actually, the main benefit that that community garden has is the health improvements, the reducing the social isolation, the improvement in mental health and well-being for the people who have taken part in that community garden project. Now, the Climate Challenge Fund was a fund which ran over 10 years in Scotland. The final projects are just being funded by it. But there's a kind of widespread recognition is that the Climate Challenge Fund based itself on, your reporting based itself on saving carbon emissions. And actually, there's much more benefits to be had if we take a much more holistic approach. Also, it tends to be, if we talk climate to people, we tend to get people who are already engaged in climate. So actually, what are the needs that are in our communities? What can be solved within our communities? And then we can kind of start to talk about climate. How do we just make more sustainable and resilient communities? So we are particularly interested in how we link those things together. As let's not just put a project in because it might be a climate action project. What actually will solve a need within a community? So things like our repair cafes, bike sheds, tool libraries, when we're starting to look at fuel insecurity, district heating systems, anything like that. So really trying to link everything together. So the key bits about the hub and how we can support with communities is that we're there to support community groups and putting together climate action projects. But we're also there to support, one of the key things that's starting to emerge now is that for trying to fund any form of project, we can see it already in the Investing in Communities Fund, that main fund that comes out from the Scottish Government, is that community organisations are being asked to have their net zero policies, their climate friendly policies, environmental policies. How are they embedding climate action in what it is that they're doing? And for some groups, that might be territory that they've never strayed into before. So how can we actually support that? So just really simple, doing an environmental policy, talking about how you can save your food waste at a coffee morning. You know, it can be really, really simple, practical things. We're there to really provide additional resource as well. So it's not, you know, if a group happened to need help with risk assessments or a funding application, if they just need that extra capacity, that's what these hub development officers are there for. So I've got 3 development officers currently, and we actually, I think I'm probably looking at taking on another 2 in the new financial year as well. We're also there to help with engagement. in terms of just helping a community talk about climate action. So that's some of the work that we've been doing so far. We've got a couple of groups that have been funded. Sorry, I've got a dog going off in the background because we have little bits of seed funding. So we've got funding of up to £500 to do either community engagement or to do to start off a project. So we've got a couple of groups that we're working with so far in Highland. One's actually in Inverness, who we're working with to just do a community engagement, place-based community engagement. And so they've received our £500 funding, but they've also received a development officer to support them in doing that community engagement. And if it just means that you need an extra body to stand with a clipboard, then we've got the extra bodies to stand with a clipboard. Education. So we are currently in the process of getting accredited to deliver carbon literacy training, which we'll be able to deliver free of charge to community groups across Highland. It's a kind of full one-day course to do the carbon literacy training. But we're also looking at shorter forms of that so that we can go and do, say, an hour with a community council and just be looking at how they can do more climate friendly behaviours. We're also working on I can see Christine's also here. We're working on a workshop at the moment as well, which is just about how to put together your environmental policy or your net zero policy. So just how a community organisation, a group from whatever level can start to look at how they're procuring, where they're getting their energy supplies from, and really simple, practical things. Like I said, how can you deal with food waste at a coffee morning? It's important things to do, you know, and it's little practical tweaks that we can do. Celebrating community-led climate action. So yeah, where we can see it happening, we want to celebrate it, we want to share it, we want to set examples to other communities. Helping groups to collaborate together as well. So collaboration and networking. So coming together and talking about projects. There's already Future Communities Highlands and Islands, which Anna had set up, and we're looking to build that into a bigger network so that people can come together and they can talk about climate action. We're also looking at, because we're seeing quite a number of the people that we're engaging with, the groups that have engaged with us so far, those who are actually working within climate, who are operating a climate project, that we can actually see quite a significant degree of climate anxiety in amongst those people. So we're going to also look at putting together a kind of network and support group and have a rant if you're working in climate. And then, as I said, we've got seed funding that's available. So at the moment, I've actually got very little of it left at the moment, but we do have up to £500 for groups up until the 31st of March. And then we'll be able to start that process all over again. We're also looking to put together, working with Highland Adapts, a Highland-wide climate festival to be held at the end of June, the beginning of July. And I hope to have funding for groups in the new financial year to be able to stage climate festivals within their areas, which is a good way to start that engagement into climate action. Is, you know, have a bit of a day with some music and maybe talk about how you can deal with food waste and just get your community talking about how they can take some community-led climate action. I think that's all that I have to cover, and I can hand over to Katie now.
John, maybe I'll just jump in there if that's okay first. Can I maybe just open it up to questions initially at that stage, just around your input, if that's okay, John?
Yeah, that's fine.
And have you got any points they want to raise with John there? I think from my own point of view, John, that the real positive bit there is about how you appear to be looking at climate and building that into business as usual for people, so that it's not this big standalone doom and gloom that people have to worry about. Yeah, we have to worry about it, but not about how all that focus has got to be on that. It's got to be built into what we're doing in our day-to-day business.
Yeah, I think that's going back to my kind of Thurso hat on. That's the approach that we've taken in Thurso, is that we're not singing climate because it's just what are those everyday actions that we can start to take, because it's the same as what we have to do in our daily lives. We have to start just taking those everyday actions. And if it's even as simple as, one of the ways that I've found very easy to start that engagement and to start talking about it, it's just even people just talking about what goes in their bins. People start to talk about that, and then that's that kind of entry into it. So it's just looking at how can you tweak things? How can you make things a little bit more climate friendly, and just start yourself on that kind of journey?
Ideal. David?
It's much actually the same as you were saying there. Given the cost of living crisis and the financial pressures that we were facing in our communities even before COVID, I think there's a really, really fine balance to ensure people can engage with climate change and net zero when they're really struggling to how to heat their home, and to how to put food on the table, and how to run their car. And I think this just transition is so important, that we reinforce that there is a just transition, that we take people with us, and we don't just ignore people because they can't afford an electric car or because they can't afford to do things. We have to find a way to work with the situation that we have, and have sustainability on you know, I always talk about the holy trinity of sustainability, which is the environment, but it's also the financial sustainability and social sustainability, which is, and that's the really important one at the moment, is people are facing such hardship that the climate is not their primary concern. So we have to find a way to take them with us, and to get the message to them. And if the things that Joan's doing is really good. I mean, community growing is one way to really reinforce that. It can help people save money. It can help them contribute towards the climate, and it's an easy concept for them to understand when they're struggling, because it really helps. So I just want to say I think it's a great initiative, and if we continue to do that and have a community focus on the environment, then I think we'll go a long way to helping our communities.
Thanks, David. Can we get any other points I want to raise about Joan's input there? Phil?
Yeah, good morning, John. You mentioned you have 3 offices and you're going to be recruiting 2 more. Are they going to be based out in areas like Sutherland, or how do people get in touch with them? What's the way in there, please?
So yes, I would. We've very much gone for regional spread, and I should have actually said is in geographic area. So we've called ourselves North Highlands and Islands Climate Hub because we didn't want to be Inverness centric. So we're, in theory, everything past the Inverness city boundary up, but we're also helping groups. We've also kind of said, because there is no other hub that's covering the rest of Highland, and it may be that we do end up covering more of Highland, or that we work in partnership with another hub that covers areas of other areas of Highland. We basically don't turn anybody away from any area. But yeah, I have development officers. So I mean, it was just, at the moment, it was just where we ended up, where the best recruited ones were. So I've actually got somebody who's based in the islands, who's based in Orkney, because we are covering Orkney and Shetland as well. And then I've got one of the other development officers is based in Caithness, but down on the east coast at Leibster. And then the other one is actually based in Inverness. But my hope is that these other 2 roles that I have is that I'll be able to spread them out regionally. But again, it depends on the applications that we receive. That's kind of what the intention is.
Okay, thanks for that. I can see a few partners around the screen there thinking that's something that we can tap into as we move forward. Okay, Katie, I saw you on the screen a second ago. You're still there?
Sorry, I was just on mute. I'm just trying to share my screen at the moment. I've got a PowerPoint to share with you all. So I'll just try and find it, and then I'll kick off. Just let me know when you can see this.
No, nothing yet.
Taking its time this morning. Apologies.
It's okay. That's it coming now, Katie.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So thank you so much for having me along today. My name's Katie Andrews, and I'm one of the climate change coordinators at the Highland Council. So I was asked to give a little bit of an overview of what the team has been doing, what sort of climate initiatives we've got going on within our team and sort of council wide at the moment. So and with that direct sort of focus on the Sutherland area. So I've kind of cherry picked a few of the big projects which are ongoing or pending at the moment. So just to give a little bit of an overview on our Highland Council Net Zero strategy, our EV infrastructure, the Green Growth Accelerator, food waste and circular economy, energy sparks and learning for sustainability Highland, and finally just looking at our communication and engagement going forward. So the first one I wanted to touch on was our net zero strategy. So combating climate change is obviously one of the most complex challenges facing public sector, and local authorities are at the heart of delivering action and delivering against these net zero ambitions. And residents, as you'll know, are really looking to the councils to facilitate that change that is necessary to address this challenge. So whilst there's been significant progress and it continues to be made to reduce the council's corporate carbon footprint, we need to prepare the region for change, and an overarching climate corporate net zero strategy and action plan will be required to clearly set out the roles and responsibilities across this agenda and in order to meet our legal requirements. So there was a full council meeting in December, and our plans for our net zero strategy were approved. So we are really trying to drive this forward, and we have our one of our climate officer coming on to lead this piece of work. So we're hoping to go with this this proposed governance structure, and it will focus on the strands of work as you can see on screen, which will help deliver that robust net zero strategy, trying to incorporate all angles of the services which we aim to deliver as a council. So the next thing I wanted to discuss was the EV infrastructure. So we currently have around 79 chargers, active chargers, and they're in 50 different locations across the Highland region. So within these 23 in progress, it includes the first Highland Council owned ultra rapid charge point. So that's a 150 kilowatt charger. And in those locations are Dornoch and Leicester. So they're within the in process allocations. So we're looking at collaborations for future funding, and the last round of electric A9 and local authority installation programme was approved. And the Highland Council are currently undertaking a Pathfinder project in collaboration with Aberdeen City Council and Aberdeenshire Council, which will investigate alternative delivery models for public EV infrastructure within the region. So there's 26 charge points being installed across the Highland Council depots as well, and this will focus around sort of the decarbonisation of our fleet, so our bin lorries and gritters and other areas of our fleet. And the other area that I wanted to highlight, which has a direct link to the Sutherland area, is the Green Growth Accelerator. So I don't know if people are aware of it, but the Highland Council's Climate Action Coastlines project has been selected as one of 5 Scotland-based initiatives to benefit from the Scottish Government's Green Growth Accelerator low carbon infrastructure funding. So the council's project aim is to deliver a research programme along with some holistic nature-based solutions along the east coast of Highland. So this is specifically focused on the Gulspie Cool region, which is recognised as being at significant risk from the changing climate and rising sea levels. And this has been highlighted within the Dynamic Coast 2 report, which some of you may have visibility of. So over the next 6 months, the council will be working with the Scottish Futures Trust, the Scottish Government, local communities and also regional partners to develop a strong business case to complement our strategic case. So this process will help us deliver sort of environmental and social outcomes for our project. And this is sort of a 25-year project and can unlock almost £40 million over the course of those 25 years. So a really good opportunity for the Sutherland area. The next thing that I wanted to discuss was food waste and circular economy. I know that Joan sort of mentioned it earlier, and as part of sort of the community composting, we've been working with Zero Waste Scotland, and Zero Waste Scotland have commissioned work on a community composting decision tree. And this is aimed to help guide people through their waste journey. As you'll know, there's obviously a lot of challenges within the Highland Council around food waste collections. So we're basically trying to develop a bit of a framework to allow individuals to access that information and know what's available in their local area. So we're working with our waste service and different groups, including the Highland Good Food Partnership, to identify those solutions and work out what challenges might be in place and how we can sort of work around them. So for that group, we've got a follow-up meeting at the end of March, and the consultant who's developing the decision tree will present their findings and their data. So I'll keep everyone updated with how that progresses. Another aspect of the waste journey within the council is circular economy. So one of the strands of work is the council is aiming to work with the Highland Community Waste Partnership to support and develop a clear pathway forward for developing sort of effective waste delivery in the Highland region. And then another strand of that work is also embedding circular economy within our own corporate structure. So we're again approached by Zero Waste Scotland as they're coming to the end of a bit of a feasibility study with Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and they're looking for another opportunity within Highland. So this is a 3-stage approach, basically looking at how we can introduce the concept of a circular economy across our organisation through education and upskilling and influencing. And then sort of stage 2 of that would be embedding the circular economy as a concept across the organisation and delivering support activities, supporting businesses and building into future planning and programmes. And then the final stage would be using that established partnership as a model for working with other organisations to influence and embed circular thinking. So we're looking to advance those conversations. And again, my team are trying to work with our waste and procurement team to see how we can develop that across Highland. And then turning to sort of the education side of things, we're trying to increase the number of initiatives available to schools and also improve our visibility of our team within schools, so that we're sort of upping that climate literacy within the classroom and also allowing teachers to know that we're approachable and they can come to us for advice and support if they are getting asked the questions within school. So one of those areas of work is the Energy Sparks project. So we're working with the sustainability charity Energy Sparks, which offers an interactive dashboard and accompanying set of curriculum-based activities that allow an individual school to track and monitor their energy consumption through sort of visual diagrams, and they can compare themselves to other schools across Highland. So we're really trying to relaunch this in a way, and obviously we're coming up against a couple of challenges in terms of school teachers and just their capacity to be able to provide a little bit of time to set this up. But we currently have 16 schools signed up, including Inver Primary and Tain Royal Academy. So all their information is on this Energy Sparks, which is publicly accessible, so you can sort of see how their energy consumption is comparing to other schools across Highland. And from those conversations that I've had with teachers on the Energy Sparks toolkit, I've joined the working group for Learning for Sustainability Highland. So this is a collection of teachers from across Highland aiming to embed sustainability within their classrooms. So they ran a couple of campaigns before COP, including the Big Highland Voices campaign, and they are basically working on different initiatives, and one of those includes food waste within schools. So there's a bit of progress going on there, and we're looking to increase that visibility. And it's important to note as well that myself and Joe Perry, the other climate change coordinator, have been trying to undertake a couple of school talks just to reinforce that messaging around climate change and ecology within schools. And then finally, sort of coming on to that communication and engagement, one of my main roles has been trying to improve the communication of the team and around climate change, not only within our local authority, but also out with and working with partners to improve those. As you say, trying to move away from that scary, very negative connotations around climate change, but saying around sort of that community engagement and making sure that people are on board and we're having that place-based approach. So we've got a couple of different strands where we're working to improve, but we've got our Carbon Clever Twitter, and we recently got Instagram as well. So that gives us two platforms to basically share what communities, businesses, and what the local authority has been up to, and share climate related news. And it gives communities and community organisations a bit of a platform to share different events that might be coming up. But we're obviously looking to investigate and invest in new approaches to our communication and really improve that two-way dialogue between the council and our communities. So one angle that we're trying to look at is the Highland Climate Change Conference, which was a great success at the end of October last year. So we're aiming to sort of build on that momentum that was last year and put on an even better event this year and try and improve that engagement. But as I said at the beginning of this presentation, our net zero strategy, one of the key elements will be pulling together a communications and engagement strategy for the climate change messaging for the council and how that will work for different communities, and working with Joan at the Climate Hub as well as other community groups and other organisations to have that real partnership approach to the way that we're communicating within the region. So I think that's enough from me, but I do welcome any of your questions. If I can't answer them now, then I'll try and get my colleagues to respond. So I'll stop sharing.
Katie, thanks very much for that. Jim.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Katie, for a very informative presentation. I was very interested. Can I focus on one particular element there, the Gosby Cool flood protection plans? Now, I've heard these words, it's just cool is actually just outside my back door here. I've heard the words floating around, but I'd really be much better informed for getting a fuller briefing, if that's at all possible, please. because the developers behind the new cool golf course, should it go ahead, are talking about a £50 million investment of private money over the next 2 to 3 years, and I've no doubt be more than keen to cooperate with the public sector in protecting this very valuable asset. So any further briefing you can give me, please, would be very, very gratefully received. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Jim, that's no problem whatsoever. We're sort of at the initial stages of the project. I've just come on and will be leading on the sort of communications, and we're going to be working on delivering some workshops just to outline what the project will be about and who we're working with as well. So that will be coming in the next sort of couple of weeks, couple of months. So I'll keep you updated with any progress that goes on.
Okay, thanks a lot, David.
Yeah, my point's on the EV infrastructure, which I think is massively important. You know, we've installed 2 in our area, and 4 or 5 years ago, the way that we were looking to fund these things was to install 1 charging point. We really need to now be looking at banks of charging points as we move people to electric cars, and we need to have that kind of mindset. And a lot of the community groups, clearly that's a huge investment. So I'm sure that you guys are aware of this, but it's just to make that point that as we move forward with EV infrastructure, we have to start thinking bigger and look towards future demand as well as the demand that's here. And it's different to having a single petrol pump like we used to have in all the villages, because you're there for 5 minutes and then you're gone. It's very different with electric charging points. So banks of charging points are really, really important so that people can really move about without having to worry and without having to plan in the same way that they do before. So it's just really to make that point that we want more charging points, and we want to see them built in, and any developments really should have multiple EV charging points.
Oh, that's a brilliant point, David, and I'll take it back to our EV infrastructure team and raise it with them. But I'm guessing through that Pathfinder project with Aberdeen City and Aberdeenshire, looking at the new models, it will be on their radar. But I'll make sure that I raise that point, because it's absolutely necessary, as you say, just dealing with the capacity going forwards, especially on high volume routes like the North Coast 500 and other areas around Highland. So thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And any other questions for Katie? Katie, I think from my own point, you're almost towards the end of your presentation there. That communication and how you get that message out is key, isn't it? There's that much going out, and people have got to focus on everything else in the world just now. So yeah, we feel your pain around that side of things. So appreciate your input there. Is there, based on that climate action in the communities, is there any other points that anybody else would like to raise at this stage? Nope. Joan, Katie, you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or I understand most people will have full diaries, so if you need to go, really appreciate your time today, which has been really, really informative for everybody here. So thanks for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. I'm going to head off. I've got a water meter issue with a greenhouse. Never a dull day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Zach.
Okay, we'll just carry on through the agenda, folks, and just going to the subgroup updates. So within the papers, most of the written updates were circulated. There is a couple of areas that I am just going to touch on, or go to a couple of people to try and give a few updates. So I know certainly 1 or 2 of them have been primed. So David, I think I'm coming to yourself. I'm going to touch on the fuel poverty, and mainly because of the reason that I want to touch on this is basically what's going on across the world just now, and what's affecting each of us day in, day out. So David, can I come to yourself just for a bit of an update?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we've got global pressures that add on to the existing pressures that we as a community had prior to COVID and prior to the cost of living crisis, and now we've got madmen in the east creating things that are making things even worse. But this is a real problem, and we're in March just now. We're still under the existing electricity cap, and come April, things are going to get much worse. Di Alexander, who works with myself and Jim, talks very eloquently and using statistics to show how much worse off that we are here. But one of the main things that I think Di has got through to me is that Ofgem, who are responsible for overseeing electricity in the UK, have based their evidence that £2,000 is going to be the average income on the fact that people have 80% gas and 20% electricity. Clearly that is not the case in the Highlands, and our bills are going to be much higher than 2,000. So this is going to be a real cost of living crisis that is worse than anywhere else. We've lost our USP because everywhere is struggling at the moment. The other thing that we face in the Highlands, and especially that isn't calculated as part of fuel poverty, is the rising price of diesel and petrol because of our poor public transport infrastructure, the distances where we are. That is another wrinkle, another pressure. So it's not just about food on the table, heat in the home, it's whether you can get anywhere, it's whether you can get to work. And, you know, we are going to be facing some severe issues. Now, we are trying to put little sticking plasters over it with our own Helping Hands Fund, and we're now doing that in Edgerton as well as our own communities, and there's a few across the county. But we'll try to help as best we can. Hopefully we won't be too long before we're into warmer weather, but we are in Sutherland, so it'll likely be July before things start to heat up. But hopefully we'll get through the worst of this. But this is going to be an ongoing thing for many years to come, and we're really going to be probably it's probably the #1 concern across all our communities. And as I said earlier, when I speak to Joan, it's really hard to engage people about things like climate change and really important issues when they are really thinking about how they put food on the table, how they heat their homes. I think Chris, your colleague Chris Murray at the SCP pre-meet said that, you know, there's further reports from police officers visiting homes that aren't heated, and it's really frightening. It's really frightening what's going on. So we have to try and do our best to help people. How we do that is going to be challenging because of the ongoing demand and the continued demand. We try our best with some funding, but we will continue to work. Myself and Jim had a really good meeting with Marie Todd a couple of weeks ago, talking about this. She gets it, and she is putting pressure. And the good thing that probably isn't much help to most people, but the good thing is the words that we are speaking to the likes of Marie and that we are feeding in are being mentioned verbatim at committees in Holyrood, to show that, you know, there are real significant issues that need to be dealt with. So I don't know, Jim, do you want to add anything to that further?
Just to reinforce everything you've said so very eloquently there, Dave, a meeting of the food group was on the 16th of February. The meeting of the fuel group was on the 22nd of February. And since that time, our world has changed. And whether it has changed for a month, a year, or 5 years, I have no clear idea. So I think we're battening down for a very hard time. And I think the basics of subsistence for most people is what we'll be looking at. And I have no immediate answers apart from relying back on the work that's been done over the 2 years of COVID. We are in a very difficult time. Thanks.
Jim, thanks. Yeah, you know, we thought we were coming out of the pandemic where we thought it was tough, and it was certainly tough for families across our communities. But now to be hit with something new over and above that is, we know the sort of impact of that. So can I just open it up, see if there's any questions around the fuelish poverty there that anybody's wanting to raise, or any other points that anybody's wanting to raise. Jim?
Just one further point of information, and it's following on from what Katie Andrews was saying and others, and that it's not kind of a fully formed as yet, but there's possibly a planning application coming forward from SSE for the Gordon Bruce electrolyser, with the first target being to feed the council fleet based around Brora. And it's just very much a finger in the wind attempt, but it's really it's the way the wind is blowing, and it's good to see that SSE as a major player in the power field are actually looking at getting electrolyzers into local area, into rural areas.
Yeah, absolutely. No other questions there on that? Okay, James, thanks very much. Audrey, I don't know if anybody's giving you a heads up, but I'm simply coming to you for a little bit of an update around some of the work going on with the transport group.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Kevin. So the transport group are meeting monthly. The next meeting is on Wednesday at 11:30. The main topic of conversation is obviously improving transport around Sutherland. We're kind of struggling to get representation from the whole of Sutherland, but we are actively trying to encourage others to attend. The main kind of ongoing issues is recruiting drivers. D1 holders are getting older, no offence to anyone on the call. And the D1 tests are costing approximately £950. So we have been looking at funding opportunities to try and get some more people in Sutherland through their D1 tests and MIDAS training. The COVID restrictions have made community transport quite difficult, but again, this should improve as restrictions ease, she says. Another ongoing issue is going back to kind of Katie's presentation, and I know you mentioned it as well, David, is the charging points for electric vehicles. They are sparse, and I know not most of them, some of the development trusts in the area, they have their electric cars for clinic runs and stuff like that. The electric cars are doing approximately 200 miles in the summer, but then it uses 2 miles per mile travelled in winter. The rapid charge overstay fees are also an issue at £1 a minute after 45 minutes. These issues have been raised with the Highland Council, and I think Richard was going to update about that at the next meeting. And finally, we're working through the Sutherland Pathfinder Transport Action Plan and trying to resolve any issues raised within that action plan too.
Oh, just thanks for that. Yeah, it's no mean feat trying to sort transport across the county, is it? So I appreciate the work ongoing with that. Anybody got any questions, David? I'll come to you just a second. Any questions, anybody, or points that anybody wants to raise with Audrey around some of the stuff she's gone? David?
Yeah, it's just something that Audrey said, and I was speaking about earlier, and we want to move towards electric vehicles, and one of the key ways that we move towards electric vehicles is by making it more economically viable for people. That's actually what piques their interest, but the rise in electricity costs could play havoc with that as well. So, you know, we want to really, you know, the knock-on effects of our energy costs and the increase, and especially when we're reliant on electricity, could really impact on our ability to help with climate change as well. So it's just another point to be made that came to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Being somebody that drives an electric vehicle at work, I get a bit nervous as I'm traveling long distance, so I understand that. Okay, just in relation to the rest of the subgroups, most of you will have seen the written updates, but just to open it out to anybody that's got any questions around any of the other subgroups or any points that any of the leads from the other subgroups would like to raise. No, we're all very shy with questions today so far. Again, just going on to Linda.
Hi there, good morning. I think now is a perfect time. I was listening to, apologies, I was a few minutes late coming in this morning, but I've been listening to the various updates and challenges and progress that's been going on. I think now, right now, is absolutely the time for the Sutherland Partnership to work with the Sutherland County Committee and decide on a summit for Sutherland very early in the new elected term. I think the timing is absolutely spot on for that, where your new councillors are coming in, they'll set their course because they settle in very quickly to the commitments that they take on, the new committees, the trainings that they attend, so on and so forth. So I think now is a prime time. There is some money around. Come to the ward budgets, talk to your councillors while we're still around, and some are even coming back, or hope to come back, so good on you. But now is the time to do that. Bring in the training, bring in the support, get the introductions in. I think now is the time to start looking at a Sutherland Summit. Just a suggestion, and I believe Fiona Morrison's on the call, so Fiona will be listening as well, and I'll be talking to one or two other people about that. But it's your community partnership, guys, and it's your decision.
I'll completely take that on. Jim?
I totally agree with Linda. If you refer to paragraph 4.6 of our papers yesterday, Richard Gale highlighted the problem very eloquently, and it featured a blank statement, a very ferocious statement really, that over maybe 200 words, that we're in a situation where the Highland Council is promoting perhaps the upsurge in our main urban settlements, and at the expense of the rural areas. And I think Richard highlighted that it may not be actual administration policy, but it's a blank statement of fact, which was very, very disturbing. And I think Linda's completely correct. We have to address this, and that the first way of addressing it would be by way of a Southern Summit to actually look at what the Highland Council is going to do about it. Now, it's not the Highland Council's fault to any extent, it's Scottish Government policy, but at the same time, we've got to start highlighting it. Now, there was a Southern Summit some 10 years ago, operated by the old Community Planning Partnership, but those were different times, a different age, more innocent times in many ways. And I think we're in a very stark situation with not just our local and regional problems, but with the world order to actually just lay out some clear thinking about where we are at, but what is possible in terms of the various economic developments that can actually help our economic circumstances. I mentioned the cool thing just a few minutes ago. There is the Avoyne rocket range and so on, the electrolyzer at Gordon Bush. There are a number of initiatives taking place, and in terms and context of Northwest 2045 as well, where we perhaps look to maximise our resources for the benefit of the residents of this county. So yes, excellent idea. And who knows who will be sitting around the table in a month or so's time, Linda. You'll be very sadly missed, as you're well aware. You've been a great voice for this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Linda, you want to come back in there?
Thanks, Kevin, for letting me back in. I appreciate that. One of the things that really has to be at the forefront of the summit is Sutherland's survival and Sutherland's progression is everybody's business. You cannot leave this to the council. You cannot leave it to NHS. You cannot leave it to Police Scotland. And you definitely have to be in and about the communities and looking at the assets and the strength that lies within our communities. This has to be an all together like never before. But they're no easy words. They're actually backed by money, not mine, clearly, having been a councillor for most of my adult life. Well, a fair bit yet. But no, there is money around. That's the whole point. It isn't empty words. There is money that can be tapped into. There are possibilities to drive forward. And actually, it's in everybody's favour to work together, because a fair bit of what's happening, if you look across care and you look across support service, whether they're in school or they're in adult social care or children's services, we're all poaching in the one pool. This has to stop. Yeah, because all it means is we're depleting every single area. That's all that's happening here. So we need a real look at this. Now, we can knit more people, that we can't do, but we can make working flexible. We can make it accessible. And instead of having to work a 7-hour shift, you can work a 4-hour shift. Maybe there's local arrangements that can be made without running through a massive hoop to get your shift changed. There are ways and means of doing this. If you look at the carbon footprint, instead of having staff travelling all over half of Sutherland to do care, maybe we could have them do, as we do in children's residential, but only in children's residential, work a back shift, a sleeping night shift. It still means you're on call, but it's a sleeping night shift, then work your day shift. That's taken away 3 lots of travelling to and from. It's 1 lot because you're staying overnight in the premises, you're doing your next shift, and depending on the hours you're working, that may be your whole shift for the week, or it may be more than half your shift. There are ways and means where you can actually take policies and start to make them work across the piece. And that suits everybody. It's cost effective for everybody. And it makes jobs accessible to people who maybe couldn't normally have them. Just saying.
And saying very well, I have to say. So I appreciate that. David.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think that we really have to look at the repopulation aspect of what we're facing. We're facing really frightening population statistics that are projected, but we need to look at repopulation. And anybody who has the misfortune of having to listen to me very often knows that I go on about 5 things that really need to be there. We need homes, we need careers, we need digital connectivity, we need community, we need rural transport, and we need childcare. And the one thing that we've got to get past is we've got to look what we need in the future rather than what apparently demand is telling us we need. We don't build houses because there's no demand. We don't create childcare because there's no demand. Build the capacity and people will move here. That's what we have to do. We have to look at creating the atmosphere and creating a community and a county that people want to come for because they know they can get the services. So we have to change the way we look at things. Rather than the traditional way of demand, we look at what do we want and how do we want to repopulate the area.
Thanks, David. Phil?
Yeah, thank you. I am jumping a little bit forward to the Northwest 2045 update, but you'll see on that there is a repopulation zone that is being established. This is a Scottish Government pilot, and there is somebody going to be recruited who's going to be looking at housing, developing housing and developing workspace. But I have to say that, you know, based on what Linda was saying, it's really the jobs that are important. And I have just been sent an email promoting a trainee reporter job for Northwest Highland. And that is the kind of opportunity that we've really got to play our part in getting out there, because there may be a school leaver or somebody in Northwest Sutherland who would really make the most of that opportunity. And I think that if we as a partnership can help make sure that everyone knows about these opportunities, then we might get people coming forward. And if those kind of schemes become successful when people recruit in that way, then more people will do it. And then there are partners around the table that employ quite a lot of people in Highland. You know, sometimes maybe we need to look at the way that we do that as well. And something like a Sutherland Summit would be quite a powerful place to make that message clearly heard. There was one other point I wanted to make related to something different. So if I may, Kevin, just go to that, unless there's more that people want to talk about those other things. It was to do with the funding, which was raised at the bottom of the updates there. So I'm really pleased to announce that the council has approved £20,000 for the Sutherland Cares adult counselling service. And that will enable Dawn at Firth Group, on behalf of the Sutherland Partnership Pathfinder, to offer telephone counselling via the Scottish Counselling Service to anybody that needs it across Sutherland. And I'm sure that we will. The information will be coming out from Charles Meinl at Dawn at Firth Group shortly, but that basically is almost ready to go. So again, if we can just say to people around the table, if you know people that are struggling, or if you know ways of getting this out into the community, let them know, because actually having a chance to talk it through with somebody with up to 6 counselling sessions over the phone may be really, really beneficial and may head off more severe problems in the future. Now, having said that, there is still a bit of the Pathfinder funding that Council has made available, still available. So the idea is that the funding should be used for projects that are aligned with the Pathfinder. So please, you can see the kind of projects and areas that people are working in, you know, ranging from transport to well-being. If you've got a project, particularly a community-based project, that a little bit of money will get something going that will contribute towards those Pathfinder goals, then get in touch with me or find the website, the form on the website, and make an application. And we'd really welcome some applications. So thank you.
Thanks, Phil. And yeah, that's really good news. That funding really positive. So appreciate that and the support from the members around that. Helen, can you come to yourself?
Hi, thanks, dear. Just to say on the housing front, just before I came on to this call, I was a wee bit delayed coming on, and that was because we just heard that we got our funding from the Scottish Land Fund, and that's our stage 2. We're just about to sign off our heads of terms with the landowner, and that will be 8 new houses and 2 commercial spaces. And we're also working with the Crofters, who are also going to develop 3 sites for self-build. So we're looking at a minimum of 11 new housing opportunities in Scourie. I would also, just to give an example, based on some of the stuff that others have been saying, I was speaking to the person who's HR at Lochduart, and they were telling me they had employed 2 middle management people, and they'd hope to have them based in Scourie. There was 5 children there, no houses, so they went to the Western Isles. So we're losing employment, we're losing children. You know, children are the key, they're the future, and because we don't have housing. So really, hopefully the Highland Council's repopulation officer and that project, you know, will be really a positive move, and we get somebody good in post that can get out there and start speaking with the landowners. So I just wanted to report that. It's not in the public domain yet, and obviously you won't go and speak to anybody in the press, but I just thought it brings at least one positive thing to the table today. So we're just delighted.
Helen, thanks for that. And yeah, really good news for Scourie and for the West and the whole area. So really appreciate your update around that. I'll maybe jump ahead a little bit and give a bit of an update that I was going to give at the end, if that's okay, because it sort of ties in with what we were talking about there. So in a couple of meetings over the last few weeks, you know, I've had a bit of a discussion with some members of the partnership and some others from out and about from Highland and also in the last couple of days from a national level. So there is a bit of a push to change the approach from some of the partnerships, and I'm still trying to get a bit more information around that. So for me, it's really around the partnership and me having a 3, 6, 12-month plan about how we develop going forward. And that's not for me to have the bright ideas. That's for people with experience like Linda, who's got that years of experience in there with that ideas. So I really appreciate that. So and it's really about looking at and picking up on your point there was about how do we all work a lot more effectively and stop working in silos? How do we pull things together so that we are becoming a bit more effective? And with the change that from a Highland level and from a national level, where they're talking about the potential of coming away slightly from localities to more thematics across the wider area, then I think that's a key time, a potential change in members, a potential change in those who participate in the partnership. It's an ideal time for us to look at who we consist of, what we're doing, where we're actually going in the future. And I think taking points that have been put forward there, we add into that and we look at refreshing not looking at major changes, but look at refreshing what we do day in, day out. And so that was sort of going to be my sort of closing bit at the end. That's the way we're looking just now. And an example of that is housing, and looking at whether that should, and I think there was a resounding yes from those that I spoke to, that the housing should sit somewhere within the partnership, because it directly affects the population, employment, blah, 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 across the communities. So it's just to give a little bit of an update around that. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments that they want to have on there. Okay, Helen, is yours a old hand? Certainly not an old hand.
It most certainly is an old hand, and fine, you know it. Right, thanks.
Many a time it nearly gave me a clip around the lug too.
Well, just as well we're not in the table.
Okay, thanks. So any other points that anybody wants to raise around the subgroup updates? For me, that's been a really positive discussion around there, and really sort of something for us to focus on us going forward, and I'll take a couple of actions away from that. Just looking at the locality plan leads. So again, we've had written updates that have been circulated, and there is work ongoing. Certainly around the Kyla Sullivan, we're still waiting. Angela, I'm still waiting for Scottish Fire and Rescue to come back to me just around the replacement for Jason. So as soon as we get that, then we will introduce that person to the team. Chris Murray's on the call. Chris has just taken over as chair of the Golspie locality. So I don't know if anybody's got any particular points over and above the written updates that they want to give around localities, or whether anybody else on the call has got any questions they would like to raise. Nope. So okay, happy enough with localities. And like I say, David Watson, did you just put your hand out there?
I just want to say, as part of the Kyla Sutherland a group, that we one of the key things that we delivered was a really top class resilience plan for the area that looked really in depth at everything, including broadband outages and everything. And the part of that delivery made us realise that we had some communities in areas where we didn't have defibrillator coverage, and we didn't have safe spaces during blackouts. So we applied for funding to the Beatrice Fund, and we achieved it to put in 5 extra public defibrillators and 4 electric hookups to community buildings, so that in the time of a power outage, SSE can hook up a generator to them. We've got them all sitting down in the main office just now on tables, ready to be installed, so the contractors will be going out soon. So all the equipment's here, just need to get the contractors installed, and that's a brilliant output from one of the locality groups, that we've done the research, we've created a plan that will be regularly updated, but we've also identified issues within the area, and we've gone and got funding and solved it. So that's a really good example of how these locality groups can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Just taking it down real to basic facts about what we should be doing in the areas. So yeah, I appreciate that. Jim.
Well, just to say a little bit of confusion on my part, because these locality plans have been set up by Scottish Government and they've worked well. We've had a chance to dig into certain communities that need support. And so but we now have emerging, we have the whole concept of place plans, and it's trying to fit locality plans, place plans, and all these plans together. So I think it just reinforces the idea of Linda's Southern Summit, to actually get the whole lot pulled together, so we actually can see what we've actually done, what has where we're at, and then make the next steps, as you're suggesting, Kevin. So yeah, I think we need to take a grip of the thing, because I think there's a certain confusion at a government level as to how many plans there are, and what kind of plans, and what the purpose of the plans are.
Yeah, I completely agree. In the conversation about a thematic plan for, I'm not just going to pick on Inverness, but for Inverness is completely different to a thematic plan for Sutherland. So me as chair need to go back through the coordination group and make them realise that yeah, we will take on what you're telling us, but we'll make it fit for the county. Because if not, we're failing in what we're here to do, I would suggest. Okay, just anything else around localities? Excellent. Okay, I'll come to each of the other updates, and it's just whether anybody's got anything else that they want to raise. David, around the SAC.
Yeah, the SAC team, 3 of the 4 SAC team gave Kyla Sutherland Development Trust the SAC over the last 3 months and have moved on to other things, which is fine. We knew that was going to be happening, but what we have managed to do is we have got an extension from the Scottish Government to continue the project until December, the end of December this year. So we'll be moving on with 2 officers, which we'll be recruiting soon. And I'm also having regular conversations with HIE and with SSE about what happens after that, and we are confident that we will have more support for an extended period after December as well. So the good news is that although we've lost some really good people who've contributed well, and I wish them well in their future, we will be recruiting new staff to get the SCP through this next stage. As Linda rightly says, we're going to have a kind of new administration of Sutherland councillors, and we're going to have potentially new thematics. So it's a period of change. We have to kind of consolidate what we have been delivering and make sure that continues to be delivering, and then think what we need to be delivering in the future. But there will be support staff, and we have a good record of employing really good staff, and we will continue to try and do that the best that we can. So I think that's good news, that there will be ongoing project and partnership support to deliver the projects that we deem to be important for Sutherland in the future. David,
thanks. Yeah, and I understand your challenge around that, and appreciate your work that you're putting into that for everybody. So, anybody get any questions around there? Okay, CLD, Angela, am I right? I forgot to note down any.
Yeah, CLD is me, but I don't think I've got any updates for this meeting. In the previous one on the notes, there was a link to the strategy, and with the priorities, obviously tie in nicely with the partnerships priorities. And I think since the last meeting as a leads group, we've had a bit of a sort of a briefing and a sort of a training exercise with Fiona Richardson. So I'll be working on that just to make sure that we translate everything that we've been doing into actions for the strategy, and collecting a few case studies, I think, which would be really important for us to do.
Thank you very much. Any questions around that for Angela? Northwest Forum. Anything that anybody's wanting to update on there? Nope. Phil, Northwest 2045, anything over and above what you've already said?
No, thanks. I think it's quite a comprehensive update there in the report.
Yeah, ideal. The resilience group, Angela, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, quickly. Obviously, Karina's given quite a good written update there of what's been happening. But since she put that together, of course, we have had another resilience call, which was last week, and we'd invited Gillian Gunn, Scottish Government Empowering Communities team, working on the fund, the Investing in Communities Fund. So that is about to be opened in April. So the purpose of her coming along was for everybody to just ask questions, because there's a number of bids being prepared across Sutherland. So that gave us an idea of what was coming forward, and just really encourage people to work together to make sure there's no duplication and to collaborate as much as possible. So I think we're going to touch again on that at the next meeting. If anybody is preparing an ICF application and wasn't on that call, be really grateful to hear from you again, so that you have the opportunity to come along to the call, and we can just sort of keep a record, if you like, of all the different bids going in. It's a big fund. But the competition across Scotland obviously is going to be huge. It's going to be oversubscribed, and Sutherland will stand a better chance of success in that fund if we can demonstrate collaboration, as I say, and no duplication. But it's really spot on for the sort of things, everything we've been talking about today. It's about place, it's about tackling inequalities, and it's about net zero. So I think there's some support there we can draw on from the Thurso Hub, everything that Joan was talking about this morning, and I'm sure we'll see some really good bids going forward, either on a locality base or even on a thematic base. And I think there were conversations perhaps about a Sutherland fuel poverty bid, but more conversations to be had on that one. Okay.
Thanks, Angela. Any points anybody's wanting to raise? Angela Platt, can you give yourself just around Sutherland Pathfinder updates?
Okay, thank you. So the Pathfinder project was launched in January, and we've got 5 thematic action plans that have been taken forward through subgroups: children and young people, communities and families, emotional wellbeing, employment, learning and training, and transport. And the action plans are all being worked on within those groups. Meetings are being held monthly. Really good information sharing within the groups, and we've already found out lots of information of what's already happening, and we're at the stage of identifying gaps in services as well. We've got monthly project board meetings where the subgroups come together to share the information that they've gathered and to update on what's been happening within the group. Next meeting for that is next Tuesday the 15th at 2 p.m. So if anybody would like to attend either that meeting or any of the subgroups to input what's happening within their community or their organisation, they're very welcome to do so and just need to get in touch. And as Phil mentioned before, there is funding available through the Ward Discretionary Fund, and there are various other funds that we could make applications to, including the Scottish Government money that's held by Support in Mind for rural community engagement, which specifically focuses on mental health and wellbeing. So there are a lot of opportunities, you know, and I'm willing to support any applications that people would like to make.
Thanks, Angela. A lot of work going on there around that, so it's good to see that getting driven forward. So, anybody get any points for Angela just around the Pathfinder? No, okay. That's us run through the main parts of the agenda there. So I'm just going to come to AOCB. As usual, I just ask people to keep it relevant to community partnership stuff. And if there's anything anybody's wanting to raise, Michael, I see your hand up there.
Yes, I sent to Gail Prince this morning a thing I got from the action from the West Coast about the safety of the North Coast 500 driving on the left. There has been apparently numerous near misses and other incidents over that side of the country. And so the 3 community councils there, Durness, Lochindverk and Lochbervie, have got together with their own sign. It's basically the blue circle with the arrow keep left on a yellow background board with 3 or 4 different languages about keeping left. Whilst this is a good makeshift sign, they feel that it would be a lot better if it was on a metal background like the North Coast 500 brown signs. These are quite expensive, but anyway, I ran it through with Jim McGilvery. Yes, he might want to come in and comment. He thinks that there's probably funding from the tourism side for this one. And the second point to raise is, I think at the partnerships, we had a leaflet that went to hotels, stations, airports, what have you, that camper van people and other foreign tourists could pick up a leaflet about, you know, driving in single track roads. Yeah. And if that could be instigated again, that would be useful.
Jim's comment there.
Yeah, I've undertaken to follow these up, Michael's requests up, and I'll chase up both the tourism side with Chris Murray and also the roads department guys, just to check on the legality of such signs, and also to follow up the pamphlet as well. So as I'm thinking, I'll start doing over the weekend.
Thanks for that, Jim. Personally, I'm not 100% sure that it's a community partnership type business, Michael. I know that previously I was involved in the launch of that Driving the Life campaign, which maybe Chris is about to come in and speak about, which probably does tie in with some of the NC 500 stuff. And that's so. Chris, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say, obviously, road policing obviously do a fair bit. They do a fair bit around those leaflets, and they do go out to hire companies and etc. So I'll just take that away just to deal with that separately and make sure that's still happening. But that goes to the airports to hire companies across the Highlands.
Yeah, ideal, Chris. Thanks. Yeah, Michael, that's certainly work that's ongoing. So Chris will just tie in with his colleagues and just to make sure that is getting pushed out. So thanks for that. Any other points that anybody else wants to raise just now? David.
Yeah, it's something we spoke about again at the pre-meet. One of the protected characteristics that I think that we could do a little bit more with at Sutherland Community Partnership as we go through into the next after the new members are elected, is that although we haven't been ignoring it, I don't think we've explicitly been doing things to help people with disabilities. And if you look at Scotland, 1/5, a million people in Scotland define themselves as being disabled. That percentage doesn't really vary across rural and urban areas. So we have a high percentage of our population, potentially well over 1,000 people, who will be defining themselves as disabled. And that has even amplifies the issues in rural areas where transport is so much worse, where the distances are so much worse. So I think it's one thing that we need to kind of embed, and I don't think we need a separate subgroup, but I think we need to embed in the agendas of the existing subgroups to consider disabilities and projects to help people with disabilities as we go into the future. And I just think because it's such a big part of our community, that we need to do a little bit more. And that's not to say that we've purposely been doing less, but I think it's a really good opportunity as we're rethinking what we're doing to add that protected characteristic into the work that we do and make sure that we treat people who define themselves as disabled with the dignity that they deserve, and make sure that we create as good an atmosphere for them as we can in the future.
No, absolutely do it. Take that on board, Angela.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's come up within the Pathfinder project. It was identified within the workshops and the research that I've done. There are very limited services and activities for people of all ages with disabilities, particularly children. You know, trying to find activities for children with disabilities during the school holidays is really very difficult. All activities are inclusive, but they're not always suitable. And it is something that we're trying to investigate and work on.
Okay, that certainly will take that away. I'm seeing Margaret, your point was, yeah, absolutely around employment there. So yeah, we'll take that away and we'll put that to the leads of all the groups, and you know, to have disability, to have climate action embedded within their agendas, and so that it becomes just common practice. And as you say, it's not that we're singling anybody out from there. So thanks, Angela and David, for that. Linda.
Thanks, Kevin. Can I share another one of my soapbox issues with you? Honestly, I'm going today, and that's the last you'll hear of me as a councillor. I'm not saying I'll not come back in a different form, but today's the last you'll hear from me as the councillor. When we go down into very tiny communities and tiny numbers, it's very easy to write the individuals there off for disability because the time travelled, the time spent, the time travelling back, and it just doesn't give best bang for buck when you look at it through Audit Scotland, yeah? But if you get it right for a tiny community and accept that within that community, some people will be disabled, some children will be isolated because the only peer support they have is during school hours. They may be the only child in the village, they may be one of 3 children in the village, all of whom are siblings, and their role within that sibling partnership is defined throughout their entire life, for lack of other children, yeah? And we know that's just no good for kids. Some of our primary schools right now are in single figures. And within that single figures, you'll have 2 or 3 that belongs to one family or a cousin of. Now, peer groups very much support the development of children. They also shape and inform the development of children. And when you have those tiny numbers, yes, it's better than private education, but there's a lot of misses there as well. So it's about making the community sustainable, coming in and around that community, and looking at as a whole and access to services, yeah, rather than an individual. Another thing I would love to see us do, I've never achieved this yet, but maybe going forward, and that's real community asset mapping. We tend to put a label on somebody and we say, you're disabled, that's your job 24/7. We know who you are, and here's the kind of services you're likely to need. We're very bad and very poor at going back and saying, what can you contribute to the community table? What can you do? What would you be interested in doing or sharing? Yeah, we do that very quickly. My personal experience of this was many years ago when my son was around about 27, and Donald would have loved a job. Donald's profoundly physically disabled, the most academic of my 3 children, but profoundly physically disabled. And applying for a job, and the job was to take tickets in the View Cinema in Inverness, because he lives in Inverness, and to take tickets. He's a real film buff and everything else, and has lived in the cinema for many, many years of his life. And he was told no, he couldn't get that job because he was a fire risk. Now, I get what they mean, absolutely get it when you drive a big, powerful motorised chair, etc., etc. I also remembered many years ago a government minister, a Westminster government minister, a Labour fellow, being castigated because he suggested that we have 3 disabled people do the one job and we split the hours pay 3 ways, because where one couldn't do all of the job, somebody else could do part of it. I think that was so pro-disability and recognising what people have to offer, and he was castigated for it. It was slave labour, it was disrespectful to disabled people, etc., etc. I hope we've become a bit more informed, a bit broader. There are people in our communities who have a lot to give, but in our hurry to assist them, we have labelled them and then we've forgot about them because we assume that being disabled is the only thing they do, being X is the only thing they do. So there's a wee bit something there. Again, I'll leave it with you.
I think I'll go back to the start of your input there, Linda, where you said that you're maybe finishing as a councillor, but you might come back in another guise. I don't think might's the word there.
Oh no, I'm definitely finishing as a councillor. I'm not even giving them the opportunity not to vote for me this time. I'm definitely standing down.
Well, it wasn't the councillor bit, it was coming back in another guise that I was picking up on. So,
all right.
No, your point is, yeah, completely taken on board, and trying to influence our groups across the county to recognise that is key for us. So, really appreciate that. Anybody get any other business they want to raise just now? I suppose for myself, is actually just picking up on Linda's point there, and from conversations I've had yesterday and today from Ian McClelland and Jamie, is from the councillors who are here, the councillors who are not present, but those who are not standing and those that are standing, is really from us as chairs, and I'm sure from the wider group, is to pass on our thanks for your involvement, your dedication and support of not just the partnership, but of the communities of Sutherland. So genuinely, just to pass that regards on to each and one of you, and wish you all the best in the future when you come back in another guise. So folks, if there's nothing else, then really appreciate your time today. A lot of really interesting conversations there, and I think a lot of conversations that set us up for moving ahead as a partnership, and not just bimbling on, but really making progress as we move on, to try and make that difference that we're here to do. So genuinely appreciate everybody's time, and thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day. I've given you half an hour back in your diaries.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Thank you very
Terrific
much.
meeting, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.